Our generation is more obsessed with the body than ever, and somehow also more unhealthy than ever. On one end, we've got people who completely ignore fitness. Long hours, desk jobs, endless video games, hours of doom scrolling, the body is slowly breaking down. And on the other end, fitness isn't a tool anymore. It's an identity, a god, a mirror they worship every single day. But the real issue isn't fitness itself. It's how we think about the body. Either we neglect it or we glorify it, and both miss the point. Scripture never calls us to ignore the body, and it never calls us to worship it either. There's a third way, and almost no one is talking about it. In this video, I'm going to show you how to approach fitness biblically, not driven by vanity, not shaped by laziness, but rooted in stewardship, discipline, and worship. Then I'll show you practical steps of how to actually accomplish that. If you've ever felt stuck between ignoring your body or obsessing over it, this is for you. I'm first going to go over the heart and our motives behind working out. Then I'll lay out the faith framework for approaching fitness. Then I'll go over training itself, laying out the 10-5 method, and even giving you an entire workout program if you stay to the end. What is up, YouTube? In this video, I'm going to be going over how to get fit biblically and steward your body in 2026. I'll be giving you guys a full roadmap on how to go from unhealthy to healthy, both spiritually and physically. So just to kind of give you guys a little roadmap of what we're going to be going into this video, I'm going to be breaking down 3 different pillars. So pillar number 1 is the heart and our motives of why we even work out in the first place. Pillar number 2 is the faith framework that we can use to ultimately get fit in such a way that Christ is at the center of it all. And then lastly, I'll be going over pillar number 3 in purposeful training and the 10-5 method of actually how and the practicals of actually how we get fit biblically. So to first start off, pillar number 1 is the heart, right? Nowadays in our society, fitness is kind of on a spectrum. It is either ignored, not even done at all, just kind of pushed off to the side, especially with our growing amount of desk jobs and just AI in general. A lot of people can tend to fall into the camp of not really valuing fitness or their body at all and just kind of not working out. But on the other end of the spectrum, fitness is essentially an idol. It is someone's entire identity, and it just becomes a source of vanity in their lives. So my focus in this video is to ultimately show you guys how to get to a place in the middle where we're not focused on vanity, but at the same time we're not ignoring fitness at all. And ultimately, how do we reach our fitness goals? How do we make those goals? And ultimately, how do we get fit while keeping Christ at the center of it all? So pillar number 1 is the heart. Okay, so just when we get fit, we typically fall into 2 different camps of motives. Motive number 1 is often centered on self. So some examples of this is just training for worldly validation, or maybe it's pride and self-glorification, or maybe it's, impressing other people, getting fit in such a way that people look at you and they're like, oh my gosh, look at their body. Maybe you're training to obsess over your own body and look in the mirror constantly, kind of making yourself and your body your own little god in a sense. Maybe you're training to find your value and identity in the way your body looks. So essentially, if you quote unquote have a six-pack, have big arms, biceps, chest, etc., you feel more valuable and confident in that sense, rather than maybe not having as big of arms or no abs at all. And then training for like other people, like what will Susie think when I finally achieve that body? So not necessarily training to look at yourself, but ultimately so that other people will look at you in what you would think is in a more positive light. Okay, so this motive centered on self often leads to temporary results and unfulfillment. And the reason why is because you set such high standards, and not only are these such high standards, but they will ultimately never fulfill you. All right, so oftentimes that'll lead to burnout or just you simply not being consistent over time, which will not give you the results that you ultimately want to see in the long run. And on the flip side of that coin is motive number 2, which is centered on God. right? So some examples on this is just training to steward the body that God gave you. Maybe it's aiming to serve the members in your church through becoming more strong or capable to maybe move certain items or just help people out in general. Maybe it's for your mental clarity and focus, training in such a way that allows you to be more mentally clear, present in your workplace, more sharp and mentally just focused. Maybe it's training in such a way to lead others more effectively, right? Having a more strong and capable body can allow you to witness well, and also just increases your energy to care for others. Maybe it's to be healthy and active for your kids, grandkids, or even great-grandkids down the line, right? As we age, our bodies inevitably will kind of start to fall down the ranks a little bit just in terms of our physical capabilities. So maybe you're training so you can be healthy, alive, and active for your kids and grandkids, and maybe even great-grandkids down the line. Or maybe you're training for your self-control and discipline, right? Inherent in building muscle or losing fat. We have to make some sacrifices here and there. So maybe you're training such that those sacrifices, whether it be choosing an apple over a donut or getting up early to go to the gym, those aspects of self-control and discipline oftentimes carry over into a ton of other areas in your life. Or maybe you're training for your joy and happiness. Just training, getting up, being active, going on a walk increases your blood flow, which oftentimes just allows your brain to be just more happy, present, and it also increases this molecule called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which ultimately gets your endorphins going. You might have experienced a runner's high before, so maybe you're training to increase your joy and happiness. And then lastly, to serve your wife or husband. Maybe, you want to be fit such that maybe when you're 70 years old and your wife falls and breaks her ankle on a hike, you want to be able and fit such that you can pick her up and, being able to carry her to a safe spot and not be stranded in the wilderness. Just having some sort of physical capability for that. Or maybe it's just in general, your wife wants you to look a certain way, so ultimately you're training to serve her in that aspect. And oftentimes when our motives is centered on God, and not so much on our own selves, our own pride, our own ego, and validation from others, this often leads to not only lasting transformation because your why is a lot stronger, but it'll lead to fulfillment, right? If our main goals in this life is to love God, see Him more clearly, and make Him known to others, having our fitness motives centered on God will oftentimes allow us to fulfill that purpose in a more greater sense, rather than if our fitness goals were centered on ourselves. So I could go so much more into the motives themselves, and that's exactly why I have a video on why we should train as Christians coming out next time. So definitely go ahead and look at that after you watch this video. So pillar number 2 is going to be the faith framework, right? So when we're training, this is a great framework to have to ultimately keep in the back of your mind, or basically just to go off of as you start to train and get fit. So F, focus with self-control, okay? So what does this not look like? This is not serving the flesh, right? So for example, Galatians 5:16 says, walk by the Spirit and you will not gratify the desires of the flesh, right? So many times our bodies just kind of want something in the short term. We want a short-term pleasure that maybe doesn't bring as much benefit. So ultimately it looks like, sacrificing, not feeding the flesh so that you can put in some self-control to ultimately get something that has a better reward in the end, but maybe takes a little bit more longer to get there, right? And one practical example of this is just simply emotional eating, right? So food becomes a comfort idol when it replaces God in moments of stress or anxiety. So if you're constantly stressed out, from a lot of work or maybe from your kids, and you go to food, that's kind of a warning sign. Okay, I need to focus more with self-control and not let something like gluttony, rule your life and become a comfort idol when you should be going to God or a healthy, godly community during those times. So this looks like ultimately pursuing Christ fully. 2 Timothy 1:7 says, for the Spirit God gave us does not make us timid, but gives us power, love, and self-control, right? Self-control is the last fruit of the Spirit. So ultimately it's training in such a way that self-control is a key pillar and you're able to sacrifice more short-term pleasures for greater long-term pleasures. So some key questions to ask yourself on a consistent basis is essentially like what environments weaken your self-control and how can you reshape them. I'll get into that a little bit in the practical examples. And another question is, what is one daily habit I can surrender to God today so that I can better steward my body and life to Him? Am I turning to food instead of God for comfort, right? Being radically aware of kind of what sources you're going to for comfort. And then lastly, when am I most tempted to operate from impulse instead of intention, right? So some practical examples of this is like, for example, exercising self-control through choosing something like an apple over a donut. And this isn't just because you like just can't have the donut, but ultimately because you're training your desires, right? At the end of the day, there's no foods that are necessarily bad for our fat loss. I'll get into this a little bit later, but it's ultimately being consistent over time and sacrificing maybe some short-term joy for a donut to switch that out with an apple that might not give you as much joy in the short term, but ultimately serves your goals in the long run. Maybe it looks like stopping at one serving instead of eating until you're stuffed, especially in today's world with all the hyper palatable foods. We can get so sucked into gluttony and just eating when we don't even need to eat. Like, we're not hungry, we're just kind of eating just to eat, right? So what does it look like to exercise self-control and kind of stop when maybe you're not stopping until you're stuffed, right? Or maybe it looks like turning off Netflix at a reasonable time so you can actually sleep earlier instead of staying up, right? Sleep is a super important factor when it comes to our fitness, which I'll get into a little bit later. But ultimately, what does it look like for you to exercise self-control in your sleep cycles? Or maybe it's crafting an environment to make it easier to not fall into temptation. So this is a huge thing. Like, I see some people, even just in their house, having candy, junk food, just readily available in a cup or bowl on their kitchen table, and it's just super easy to, grab a few bites or pieces of candy here and there, which ultimately will add up over time. So one super easy thing you can do to make it easier to exercise self-control is simply putting the candy or junk food up in a high cabinet drawer where it creates a barrier for you to actually easily being able to access that stuff, right? Or maybe it looks like going to God for comfort instead of food. Instead of getting home from a long day of work and cracking open some chips or unhealthy food, maybe you take time to pray first, maybe dive into scripture instead of just immediately going to food for comfort. Or one thing you can also do to exercise self-control, especially with your macros, is pre-logging your food to be intentional with your eating. So maybe if you're going to have pizza or a big meal at night with friends, you can pre-log that food into your calorie tracking app, which I'll get to in a little bit, to be intentional with your eating and making sure you're having self-control and not going over your limits. And then lastly, maybe it looks like setting limits on social media to protect your mental clarity and stop unfruitful comparison. So especially in today's world, on social media, you're just getting flooded with so many ideal, perfect model bodies, and consistently over time exposing yourself to that will often lead to unfruitful comparison, which ultimately brings no benefit in your fitness journey. So that's kind of the first one with the F, focus with self-control. For the A, it's kind of similar, but advancing with discipline. So this is ultimately placing our faithfulness over our feelings. So this is showing up even when you don't feel like it. It's consistency over perfection and obedience over emotions. Right? So it's being able to sacrifice, maybe you don't want to do something. Maybe it's in the morning. You planned on going to the gym. Your alarm goes off, but you just don't want to go. It's looking like showing up even when you don't feel like it. Right? It's proactive persistence. Proverbs 6:6-8 says, "Go to the ant, you sluggard. Consider its ways and be wise. It has no commander, no overseer or ruler, yet it stores its provisions in summer and gathers its food at harvest." Right? So what does it look like, for you to be disciplined, even when you don't have anybody watching you, and do the things you need to do on a consistent basis, so then you ultimately see results in the long run. And one killer of discipline is simply just making excuses. Proverbs 22:13 says, "The sluggard says, 'There's a lion outside. I'll be killed in the public square.'" Ultimately, we can often find ourselves making any type of excuse just to not do something that we ultimately don't want to do. And especially with fitness, one major excuse I see all the time is simply, "I don't have time." And the thing with that is, there is someone out there who's had it worse, had less time, and has still made progress. right? So what does it look like for you to be disciplined, not make excuses, and do the thing and do what you said you would do, right? So whether it's planning beforehand or just being disciplined, even those hard times, one easy way is just to have an accountability partner or a coach to help guide you in those times that you maybe don't want to do something. And then, like again, I said earlier, having a strong enough why can oftentimes make discipline easier and allow you to not make excuses. Like, for example, if you think back to your why, maybe in this case your why is getting fit for your grandkids or great grandkids later down the line, being healthy and readily available to play with them. And you think about, like, today, make an excuse of, oh, I don't have enough time to go to the gym, or I don't have enough time to meal prep. And like thinking about it in such a way, like, that's the barrier for you being able to play with your grandkids down the line, is just not a very good excuse for that ultimate end goal. Hebrews 12:11 says, no discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it. Right? So ultimately, it's exercising discipline on a consistent daily basis, even when it may not seem pleasant at the time, because ultimately you know that at the end of the day, this is going to produce a harvest full of righteousness, and it's just going to be well worth it in the end by sacrificing some short-term pleasures for greater long-term rewards. So some key questions to ask yourself is just simply, where am I making excuses? Like, literally just pause this video right now, because likely if you're watching this video, you're looking on how to progress in your fitness and how to get fit biblically. And one reason why you might not already be there is simply because you're making excuses. So literally pause this video right now, take 5 minutes to do a heart check, write down your why are you getting fit in the first place? And then really think about, like, look at this last week and just see, where are you making excuses? Another question you can ask yourself is, what small habit can I commit to daily for the next 30 days? So one easy way to stay more disciplined is something called habit stacking. So a lot of times what can be helpful is not adding in so many new habits at once, but adding one small habit that you can commit to daily. So then at the end of the day, at the end of that period of 30 days, that habit is kind of like second nature, right? Inherent in the definition of habit is something that you can do consistently without even really thinking about it. So what is one new small habit of discipline that you can integrate today for the next 30 days? So then you can get consistent with that, and then you can add another habit on top. And then as you progress those over time, you can look back in like the last year, even month, 6 months, half a year, and just see all the progress and new habits that you've made simply by committing to one in a span of 30 days. Next question is, am I waiting for a sudden burst of motivation, or am I advancing with diligence and consistency? So many times I see so many people just waiting for, the clouds to open to finally just feel like it's the perfect scenario to start their fitness goals, or to start actually doing something. But first of all, we are taught in Psalm 90 to number our days. We are not guaranteed if tomorrow is even going to be there for us, right? So it's acting with diligence and urgency, and not necessarily waiting for motivation to come at like the perfect time, but being obedient and stewarding our season and our bodies that we're in right now, right? So it's ultimately like advancing with discipline, and not waiting for some sudden spark of motivation, right? Because motivation will come and go. It's a good spark or diminishing to the fire, but if you focus with discipline and advance with discipline, you ultimately have a sustaining fire that'll burn no matter where the motivation comes and goes. Another question is my inconsistency coming from poor planning or poor priorities? So oftentimes we can just feel like we're not disciplined simply because we don't have a good structure or planning in our day-to-day basis. Like maybe we are spending so much time just wasted. Maybe it's scrolling social media, playing video games, or doing something that isn't really going to move the needle, when we could use that time to go to the gym, or just plan out something else that'll give more leverage in our fitness journey, right? So take a moment, maybe even right now, you can pause this video and kind of plan out your day, your week, if you don't already do that, and kind of see where you can kind of fit in your priorities, and just kind of see where maybe some inconsistency is coming from, if it's from a poor planning aspect or just poor priorities in general. Kind of think about your priorities, see what you value most, and then kind of schedule and make a system around that. Next up is idle well through rest. So inherent in getting fit biblically is just intentional resting, right? We can't be go, 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 go every single day and expect to continually make results. At some point, we have to intentionally rest, right? So one reason for intentional resting is just simply resting as surrender. Psalm 127:2 says, "In vain you rise early and stay up late, toiling for food to eat, for he grants sleep to those he loves." Right? So ultimately, at the end of the day, us resting shows that we trust God more than our own grind, right? Inherent in fitness, he literally even created our bodies to, be able to recover from maybe hard bouts of fitness through rest. So it's almost even inherently ingrained in our own biology of just ultimately resting and surrendering our results up to Christ. Next up is just a Sabbath rhythm. Exodus 28 says, "Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy." So maybe one day a week you're practicing the Sabbath, and ultimately on that day, maybe you don't lift at all, right? It's just a time to take a rest day and ultimately trust that results will come as long as you're consistent, and ultimately that fitness isn't your idol, but ultimately submitting to Christ. He is the Lord over your life. And this is ultimately rejecting hustle idolatry. Like when fitness, productivity, or work becomes your identity, rest feels like failure, but ultimately at the end of the day, God calls rest faithful, right? So like if you think about it like this, like if you can't take fitness off or maybe like fast for an entire day just because you'll lose results or not make progress, then there's probably something wrong with your why or motives, in that fitness might be an idol then, right? So it's being ruthlessly aware of why you're doing things, why you're working hard. So then at the end of the day, rest is more of like a surrender aspect and intentional rather than something that blocks you from getting results. So some helpful questions to ask yourself on this is, am I resting because it honors God or avoiding it because I'm overwhelmed? Right? So many times we can maybe waste time in the daily aspect of our lives and feel like we're not making that much progress. So therefore we feel like, oh my gosh, if I take a rest day, it's gonna set me back even further than I already was. So I just can't rest. I got to keep on chugging along. Another question is, what habits drain me physically, spiritually, or emotionally that I need to surrender? What would it look like for you to schedule intentional godly rest in your week? Like think about it right now. Like what spiritual disciplines or practices do you do that allow you to really rest? Especially like rest in the goodness and peace that God brings, rather than just kind of all this chaos and influx of so many like unneeded things, especially like from social media in our current society. And then kind of like I touched on earlier, could you fast from fitness, or do you fear you would lose all your progress? Like if I told you, okay, you're not allowed to work out for the next week, would your immediate response be, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose my gains, I'm going to lose my abs, or whatever it might be? Would that be your immediate response? Because at the end of the day, like I'm not saying just to completely disregard it through rest, but ultimately at the end of the day, rest is a good way to kind of measure if fitness is an idol or not, and if you're holding on to your progress so tightly, right? On one hand, we need to be super disciplined and able to make this progress and work hard and excel at our work and witness well through our fitness, but at the same time, we shouldn't be holding on to the small little grams of protein each and every day that would make us progress, right? It's resting and surrendering it to God, ultimately knowing that we're putting in the hard work on those other days. So some practical examples on this is like I said earlier, taking a Sabbath day each week, no training for that day, maybe you don't work at all, no social media, just taking a time to enjoy God. Maybe it's reading some books or spending time with your kids or family or friends, or just worshiping or going to church that day, whatever it might be. Another easy way to just rest daily and just rest on God's easy yoke and light burden is just some quiet time with God each day. Maybe you take 30 minutes, 15 minutes, 10 minutes each and every morning right after you wake up to have a one-on-one time with God. So many times we expect a full-time God when we just have a part-time faith essentially, right? He in Psalm 23, he prepares a table before us in the presence of our enemies. And think about this table as like a full steak dinner with all your favorite foods, desserts, 9-course meal on it, everything that you could possibly want. And think about just you pulling up and just getting a quick coffee, like, okay, I gotta go, when he has all this abundance in front of you. Like that's what we do so many times with the creator of our universe, the Lord that we say is Lord over our lives. Like we just get a quick coffee chat instead of actually taking intentional time each and every day to commune and fix our eyes upon the living God, right? And maybe it's just taking your rest days and not overtraining. It's not getting worried that you have a rest day coming up, but ultimately allowing to fully rest in that, to ultimately allow your body to recover. Maybe it's prioritizing sleep instead of a show or social media. I'll get to sleep in a little bit, but ideally aiming for around like 8 hours of sleep every night instead of like binge watching a show on Netflix, or just completely just going crazy and doom scrolling. It's actually taking time and resting in that sleep process. Or maybe it's like taking a walk or listening to some worship music instead of doom scrolling, or maybe it's reading a scripture or a book. If you haven't read any of these 4 books, I would highly recommend it. Number 1 is The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Mark Comer. Kind of just goes over rest in general. If you feel like you're constantly burdened down and have so much weight on the back of your shoulders, that would be a great book for you. Or maybe you read Disciplines of a Godly Man, just about a ton of different aspects of what it looks like to be a man and follow God's word and stay aligned with Scripture and His will for your life. Or maybe Your Story Has a Villain by Jonathan Pokluda. This kind of goes into spiritual warfare and the enemy. It's like if you were playing a basketball game and you were playing a good team, before playing that game, you would oftentimes look at the film to see the tendencies of what your opponent does, what their strengths and weaknesses are. Your Story Has a Villain is essentially a film into Satan and what his common playbook is, and what he does to try to ultimately steal, kill, and destroy each and every one of our lives. And then lastly, A Little Theology of Exercise by David Mathis. This book was a key aspect of just me learning about how to get fit biblically. It goes into kind of why we should get fit, some different various like aspects of actually getting fit biblically. Just a good Christ-centered book on fitness. Next up is Treat Your Body with Stewardship. So ultimately, at the end of the day, our bodies are not ours, right? Our bodies are a gift, and therefore we should honor God with our bodies. So 1 Corinthians 6:19 through 20 says, "Do you not know that your bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit? You are not your own. You were bought at a price. Therefore, honor God with your bodies." God gave us these bodies, so at the end of the day, we should treat them well and with care, right? We shouldn't just be trashing them, ignoring our fitness at all, because He placed, if we accepted Christ, the Holy Spirit indwells within us. Right? Our bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit, not because we look good or look bad, but ultimately because we have the living God inside of us. And just taking that perspective and just looking at it with gratitude that God gave us these bodies to indwell the Spirit, we should take care of them accordingly, right? So this can kind of refine your motives. 1 Corinthians 10:31 says, "So whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, do it all for the glory of God." Right? Our aim with fitness shouldn't be like an obsession, an idol, a source of vanity, but ultimately worship through stewardship. Right? Our aim shouldn't necessarily to be just get a six-pack so people can look at me better, but ultimately to make smart choices, advance with discipline, serve with self-control over time that allow us ultimately to serve God and others more effectively through a more readily available body and vessel. So maybe this is longevity to our health. It ultimately increases our energy, increased strength, better habits, to ultimately be a light towards others through stewarding our bodies, and ultimately just being a more effective vessel for a longer period of time. So some helpful questions to think about when treating your body with stewardship and getting fit biblically is essentially, what are your motives with fitness? This is going to be a constant theme because our why and our motives are essential to why we do what we do. Right? If we have a strong motive, the reason why we do something, we'll have a better time being disciplined, having better self-control, because that why is that much more important than maybe a not a strong enough why. So ultimately, like through your motives, are you honoring God or yourself with those motives? Are you treating your body like a temple or a trash can? Are you treating it with care, or just kind of not really caring what you put in, just kind of trashing your body, destroying it slowly but surely? Or how can you better steward your energy, discipline, and health to ultimately steward your body such that you can be a more capable and ready vessel for Christ? And then what habits are damaging the temple that God gave you? Right? Are you not getting much steps in at all? Are you not really training your heart at all? Are you eating junk food on a consistent basis? What habits are damaging that temple? So some practical examples of this are just eating foods that nourish, not necessarily that hinder your energy and progress. So for example, like if you're constantly eating junk food, chips, candy all the time, that may be a sign that you're kind of damaging your temple. And it'll kind of show with excess body fat being put on, mental lethargy, and other negative aspects like that. Or maybe it's lifting to build strength so that you can serve your family, church, and community well. This goes back to your why and your motives. Stewarding your body so you can be there for your kids and grandkids in the future, like I said. And then just taking care of your hygiene and posture, right? It's not like an idol to look smacks or look as good as you possibly can, but ultimately taking care of the body that God's given you, right? Through simple things like hygiene and just posture so you can be just a more readily available vessel. And then lastly, like doing cardio to strengthen your heart. Oftentimes, I've even found myself like be in a season of just neglecting cardio just because I just don't like it. But inherent in our fitness should be some sort of cardio routine, not only just to get those endorphins flowing for our joy, but also to strengthen our heart. And this even transfers over into weightlifting itself, so that cardio is not the limiting factor, but your target muscle is. And then last but definitely not least is honoring God with your identity, right? So in Matthew 7, it talks about our firm foundation being placed on the rock. And when we do have a firm foundation, when the wind comes and the rain blows, our house will not, break down and will not crumble. Why? Because it's built on the rock, right? So especially with fitness, I see so many people building their house on sand, and this theoretical, metaphorical sand is looking better for other people, placing their identity in their body instead of Christ. And ultimately, when hard trials do come, they're just going to fade away, right? They're going to crumble under that pressure or weight of life, rather than placing their firm foundation and identity in Christ rather than their body. So at the end of the day, our fitness journey should ultimately flow from who you are in Christ, not who you're trying to impress, right? The wonderful thing and reality of our lives and the crazy truth of the gospel is that our identity is given. It's not worked up to. It's not something that we earn. It's just simply received, a free gift, right? So who you are ultimately determines how you train, not the other way around. So our identity shouldn't be found in our body, our abs, how much we bench, how big our biceps are, our waist size, our body fat percentage, our muscle mass. It should be ultimately in Christ. And at the end of the day, when we can focus our identity on Christ, it'll free you completely from insecurity, pride, and comparison, right? So it's really being radically aware of who you are in Christ, so that way, not only do you build a firm foundation that'll actually last during those tough trials, but such that you don't crumble down when you're using all your time, energy, resources to build something that'll ultimately just all fall down in the end. 2 Corinthians 5:17 says, "Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, the new creation has come. The old has gone, the new is here." So especially if you guys have accepted Christ, the old you is gone, right? And the new is here. So that in that we have a new identity, a heart of flesh rather than a heart of stone. We are made alive. It's not like we were dead people, or it's not like we were bad people trying to become better. No, we were dead and now we're alive. So understanding that identity can really help you plant your fitness in a firm foundation, rather than in something that will come and go as people look at you a certain way, or how you perceive people look at you a certain way, or just how much body fat you have in general. So this can especially look like loving and serving others via being more fit, right? So having more energy, strength, and focus to intentionally serve others, your family, and the members in your church, and ultimately stewarding your body well, because it honors God, right? Because if someone gives you a gift, one easy way to honor them is by using that gift and finding joy in that. In the same way, we can use the gift that God has given us through stewarding our bodies that honors Him. Romans 12:1 says, "Offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God." Right? Are you keeping your body for yourself and your own personal pleasures, your own personal, building your own kingdom, glorifying your own self, or are you using as a sacrifice, holy and pleasing to the Lord, saying that my old body is gone, my new one is here, metaphorically, that it's no longer mine, but Christ who lives in me. And this is definitely not like self-glorification and vanity. That's why it's so key to plant our identity in a firm foundation, so we're not thrown off the rails through glorifying ourselves or even having that temptation, right? Because when our identity is placed in Christ, we don't even have a need to glorify our own bodies and our own selves, because we know the one who has already shed his blood that makes us clean. So beware of using the gym to ultimately glorify yourself, because when you glorify yourself through your fitness, it can oftentimes lead to extreme levels of vanity and pride. So vanity is ultimately making the body the source of your worth or confidence, and pride is training so others think highly of you. So it's building your own kingdom through like finding your confidence in your body, and then also training in such a way that others look up to you in a more positive light, or look at you way better, or even just perceive others will view you in a more high light just because you have a better bench press, or more muscle or less body fat, whatever that might be. Because at the end of the day, comparison steals our joy, gratitude, and the ability to steward our gift. So you might be thinking, okay, like, I want to get fit for a pure motive, but at the end of the day, like, progress is going to come. You might even get abs even if you have a pure motive. So how can you celebrate progress without worshiping the progress and letting that become your idol? So here's a helpful little comparison on celebrating versus worshiping progress. So celebrating progress is ultimately healthy and God-honoring. It's recognizing God's grace in your growth and viewing your progress as evidence of God's faithfulness, not your own superiority, right? At the end of the day, He has instilled all these processes. He has given, all these different foods and protein that allow our bodies to use those amino acids to ultimately build muscle. He's instituted these processes in our biology, and even just created something as simple as gravity that we could take for granted that allows us, to lift each and every day. So ultimately, it's recognizing that and giving thanks for your strength that He's given you, your consistency and discipline over time that He allowed you and strengthened you to walk in. And progress increases humility because when you celebrate progress instead of worship it, because the more progress you make, the more grateful you become, right? So instead of thinking, oh my gosh, I look so good because I've gone from this to this, no, it's instead of, oh my gosh, I've gone from this to this, I'm so grateful for all the hard work that God has enabled me to do, and just being aware that growth is a gift and not a God, right? Because at the end of the day, your progress doesn't define your worth. You can still enjoy hitting new goals while knowing your identity is still anchored in Christ. That way you can enjoy looking and feeling better, but at the end of the day, your worth is not tied to your outcome. And James 1:17 says, "Every good and perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of heavenly lights, who does not change like the shifting of the shadows." Right? Progress is a good and perfect gift that we can take rest in and celebrate, but not ultimately worship. Because good gifts make bad gods. Another verse is 1 Corinthians 15:10, "But by the grace of God I am what I am, yet not I, but the grace of God that was with me." It's not my biceps, it's not my abs, it's not my big chest, it's not my huge bench press. No, it is the grace of God that was with you. Psalm 115:1, "Not to us, Lord, not to us, but to your name be the glory." Like, with our progress, worshiping it, like, your name is trying to be all the glory. Like, it's me, instead of no. It's no longer I. The old me is dead. Your name, God, be glorified. So on the flip side, like, what does it look like to worship your progress? At the end of the day, this is very unhealthy and really self-focused instead of God-focused. And an easy way to see this is when progress or results become the source of your identity, right? Your mood rises and falls just based on how lean or muscular you feel. You only feel valuable when you see visual improvement. And this can oftentimes lead to, like, ego over other people, viewing people in a more negative light just because maybe they don't have as much progress or look as good as you might. And ultimately, like, worshiping progress looks like when your progress becomes the object of your devotion. So you obsess over macros, you obsess over mirrors and muscles instead of honoring God. So it's not really caring about the things God cares about, but ultimately caring about different little things and making those your idols. You feel panic or insecurity when progress slows. So maybe you hit a little a pause in your progress. You start to feel insecure. That should be a warning sign that fitness or your progress itself might be an idol. And it's good to overcome different roadblocks or issues that will arise. But when you start to feel anxious or insecure, that's when maybe you might be worshiping your progress. You might be worshiping your progress when it's used for your self-glory, right? When you're getting fit in such a way that you're wanting compliments, you're wanting validation or admiration from others, or just training so that becomes a stage to impress rather than to steward the gift of your body that God has given you. And ultimately, worshiping progress distorts your purpose. Like the gym stops being about stewardship and becomes about superiority, right? Kind of like I was touching on earlier. You judge others and their value based on how fit they are. And at the end of the day, you might sacrifice relationships, joy, and spiritual disciplines for your physique, right? One simple thing that you can do each and every day to get fit biblically is never sacrificing something like a relationship, time with someone else, one-on-one time with someone else, any spiritual discipline for time in the gym, right? So in the morning, let's say you have 30 minutes and it's between having one-on-one time with God that you probably won't get throughout the rest of the day, or just going to the gym. It's really seeing your priorities there, and ultimately placing God first over your physique, or like fitness stuff like that. Some helpful verses here is Galatians 1:10. Am I now trying to win the approval of human beings or of God? Or am I trying to please people? If I were still pleasing people, I would not be a servant of Christ. 1 Samuel 16:7 says, the Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. Right? At the end of the day, God doesn't care how big our biceps is. He cares about our obedience each and every day and us holding fast onto Him. So what are some practical examples of, celebrating versus worshiping progress? Well, celebrating progress is just taking progress photos, but ultimately not obsessively checking your body every few hours, like every time you look in the gym, or even just at home in the mirror, you like, oh, I need to work on that. It's helpful to see, what things you need to work on, but ultimately at the end of the day, not obsessing, oh, it's like too small, my triceps too small, or X, Y, and Z muscle group looks weird or not very good, just ultimately obsessing over that. That's not celebrating progress. It's being excited about gains without letting them determine your confidence. So whether you progress, make a PR or not, it's not gonna, affect your mood or stress or anxiety. And then just resting without guilt. Like it's okay to rest, because fitness is not an idol. It's training consistently, but still making the main thing, right? It's prioritizing church, your quiet time, scripture, relationships, prayer, and not constantly, oh, I can't go to church because I need to go get my 10,000 steps in, or I can't go and have this session of prayer because I need to go to the gym, right? Ultimately we can work around that by having a good system and priorities in place, but it's keeping the main thing and not sacrificing when you do have to make a decision. And then it's tracking macros as discipline and stewardship, not for obsessive control. And then on the other hand, worshiping progress could look like feeling anxious when you miss a workout, checking mirrors constantly just to see and even just compare yourself to someone else, only feeling confident when you're lean or have a certain muscle size or bench press or lift, or maybe it's overtraining because you fear losing size, or maybe it's like I said earlier, skipping church or spiritual disciplines for more gym time or fitness related things. Or maybe it's needing validation from others or social media. Your identity is not planted in the firm foundation of Christ, so you need to find some way to fill that hole of identity. So what do? You start posting very self-focused photos and videos online, not with the motivation to encourage or challenge someone, but ultimately to get validation and feed your own ego. Or maybe it's feeling superior to people who aren't as shredded. It's looking like, okay, I have 10% body fat, you have 30%, therefore you're less important than me. That is ultimately something that you definitely need to watch out for. So as you guys can probably tell, your identity is super important when training biblically. So some reflection questions here is, are your fitness goals helping you love God and people more, or helping you love yourself more, right? If you lost your physique today, would you feel like less than? That's something that you can constantly wrestle with, is like, wow, if I lost all my muscle today, if I gained 20 pounds of body fat, would I just feel less confident? And if you would, that's kind of like a warning sign that you're placing your identity and value and worth in how you look versus who you are in Christ. How can your health better equip you to serve and love others? It's going back to your actions and good works flowing from your identity, instead of like impressing others or glorifying yourself. Are you looking at yourself in the mirror more than you're reading scripture? If you're not talking to the living God and reading His word that He's left behind, if you're not doing that more than you're looking at yourself in the mirror and glorifying yourself, something needs to change. Do you spend more time cultivating physical strength than spiritual strength? 1 Timothy 4:8 says, physical training is of some value, but godliness is of value of much higher importance. So for some practical examples of honoring God with your identity through your fitness is not comparing yourself to others on social media. You'll see so many fitness influencers, flexing their abs, having super shredded body fats, and you oftentimes don't even see them when they're not in perfect lighting, when they don't have a pump. They're oftentimes at their best when they post these. So it has no benefit of comparing yourself in bad lighting at a bad time of the day to someone who has maybe even taken steroids or just has perfect lighting, perfect angles, whatever it may be. It's just not helpful to compare maybe even your level 2 to someone else's level 7, so to speak. It's continually asking yourself, is this serving God or serving my ego? Just constantly aligning your will with God's will for your life. It's training without constantly needing gym selfies for validation. It's being careful of wearing immodest clothing. I know especially like wearing even just something like a tank top can really tempt you to glorify your own self. Maybe it's training for strength, longevity, and stewardship rather than aesthetics. So really purifying your motives and getting down to that core why, and having that why be an outflow from your firm foundation identity in Christ. Or maybe it's celebrating a PR without making it the thing that validates you. Like even if you don't hit that 225 bench by X, Y, or Z time frame, it's not the end of the world. It's starting your workouts with prayer and gratitude. So having that firm foundation in Christ, and having that be the center of every single living breath, action, and thought of your life, rather than just doing things from your flesh to glorify yourself. And then progress photos to inspire and or track progress rather than impressing others. Like you don't take a progress photo and just spam it in someone's face to make them feel bad or feel like you're better than them. No, it's ultimately for progress at the end of the day to see, okay, what things do I need to focus on, and I'll get to that in the 10-5 method. So that is the faith framework that we can ultimately use as a foundation when we're getting fit biblically. It's focusing with self-control, advancing with discipline, idling well through rest, treating your body with stewardship, and lastly, honoring God with your identity. When your self-control, discipline, rest, stewardship, and identity is focused on Christ, and those pillars are a foundation of your fitness, you're gonna make a lot of good progress, and also you're gonna be getting fit according to Scripture and God's will for your life. Lastly is pillar 3, purposeful training. So now that we kind of know how to approach fitness itself, how do we actually train? Like, what are the practicals in terms of our nutrition, our training, and our just daily habits of what we can actually do to actually see some of these results? And the method I like to call this is the 10-5 method. So Proverbs 10:5 says, "He who gathers crops in summer is a prudent son, but he who sleeps during harvest is a disgraceful son." So at the end of the day, it's being smart with the current season that we're in and stewarding that well, maximizing the summer or spring or the harvest season, so to speak, so that when the harvest does come, those crops are readily available. And that we're actually ready and taking action to harvest them. So right now you might be in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and whatever season you might be in, inherent in our biology is that we start to decline as we age. It's going to be harder to build muscle as we get older. We're going to have just less energy. Our hormones are going to be off as we get older. So what does it look like for us to maximize the current season that we're in right now with the resources, time, and just schedules that we have right now, so we can make the most out of our current hormones, current energy levels, and current things that we have access to. So the 3 F's of the 10-5 method is fuel, which is your nutrition, your form, which is your exercise, and your foundation, which is your habits. So first up is your nutrition. So this is one of the most overlooked aspects of actually getting fit, is that our nutrition oftentimes will make up even up to like 90% of our results, just because it's so inherent in the progress that we'll make in being able to fuel our bodies properly. So I'm going to go really basic here. First off, calories. It's just a unit of energy. Every time you eat something, your body will burn it and use that energy, and those are essentially calories. And whenever you're going about your day, your body burns calories in 4 different ways. So the first way is the thermic effect of food. This is called TEF. This is only about 5 to 10% of your total calories burned each day. And this is essentially calories you burn from simply digesting your food. So let's say you have a big pizza dinner and you consume that food. 5 to 10% of your total calories throughout the day will just be simply done from digesting that pizza or burger or yogurt, sandwich, whatever it may be throughout the day. The next part is your exercise activity thermogenesis, and this equates to about 5 to 10% of your total calories each day. And this is simply just calories burned during exercise. So let's say you go on a run or walk. This will go into your exercise activity thermogenesis. Next up is NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis, and this equates for about 10 to 20% of your total daily calories. And these are just calories burned by staying active throughout the day, like typing, fidgeting, tapping. A lot of just fidgeting will oftentimes equate this NEAT. Like you might have seen someone tapping their foot before. This is just kind of your body burning calories through NEAT. And then the bulk of the calories that you burn each day, equating to about 60 to 70%, is your basal metabolic rate. This is your BMR. And this is the calories that you burn each day just by regular body functions, right? It's like breathing, your heart beating, just simple bodily functions. That will literally just sitting on the couch, you're burning a bulk amount of your calories each day. So that's just kind of how your body burns calories. And that's important to know because when we're trying to, for example, build muscle or lose fat, we need to know the amount of calories that our body burns each day so we can eat in a surplus or deficit accordingly. So our maintenance calories is essentially our TDEE, our total daily energy expenditure. And your TDEE is essentially your TEF, EAT, NEAT, and BMR combined. So 100% of the daily calories that you burn each day is your TDEE, okay? And if you eat the same amount of calories that your TDEE is, you'll stay the same weight, and that's helpful to know for determining if you need to do a surplus or a deficit. So let's say, for example, all of these combined, on a consistent basis, you burn about 2,500 calories per day. Then your 2,500 calories would be your TDEE, and when you eat in a maintenance level, that means you're eating 2,500 calories to match that 2,500 calories worth of energy burned each day. So essentially you're eating as much as you're burning, right? And if you think about thermodynamics, if you're expending this amount of energy, you're eating this much, you won't gain or lose any weight. Next up is eating in a surplus, and this is when your calories exceed your TDEE. So this means you're eating more than you burn, okay? And this is essential for gaining weight or super helpful for putting on muscle mass for your body to use those excess nutrients accordingly. And then lastly, eating in a deficit means that you're eating less calories than your total daily energy expenditure. You're just basically eating less than you burn each day. So therefore, your body has to look for a different aspect of your body to pull energy from. And oftentimes, if you eat enough protein in your training, that's going to be from fat. Okay, so simply if you're eating less calories than you burn, your body has to find this energy deficit from somewhere, so you're going to lose weight, and that's essential for losing fat. To recap, if you're eating in a surplus, eating more than you burn each day, your body has to store that excess energy somewhere, so oftentimes you'll get that excess energy will be put onto your body via excess body fat or muscle mass. And then finally, if you're eating in maintenance, those two calories and calories burned are equal, so therefore you don't really gain any weight. So you might be asking, okay, I kind of understand how our body burns calories. I understand the maintenance calories, surplus, and deficit, but how do I actually know how much calories my body burns each day? So that's where finding your TDEE comes into play. Now there's two different ways you can go about this. The first way is kind of just it's just an easy way of just kind of plugging your numbers into a formula. So if you want to pause this video right now and plug your numbers in right here, depending on if you're a man or a woman, your kind of activity level right here, this will kind of give you your BMR. And that's just kind of like your estimate, or not your BMR, your TDEE. So it'll give you like your estimated maintenance calories, so to speak. So essentially, like if you're a man, it could be like 4.536 times your weight in pounds, plus 15.88 times your height in inches, minus 5 times your age in years, plus 5 and then that'll give you your TDEE. Okay, and then that'll give you your BMR, and then once you find your BMR, you multiply it by your activity factor, and you just find that by doing this. Like, are you sedentary? Are you lightly active? Are you moderately active? Are you very active or extremely active? You just plug those numbers in. So for example, this right here will give you your BMR, and then you multiply that by, let's say for example, you're very active, by 1.725. Same thing if you're a woman. So that's the formula route, or you can go online to a calculator. This is a super easy thing to do. It'll do it for you. You just go to online, search up TDEE calculator. One of the first two results that'll come up is tdeecalculator.net or calculator.net. And then this is what the two websites look like. You'll just essentially put your metrics in, and then it'll spit out your estimated maintenance calories. So this is what it might look like if you put kind of the similar results in. Oftentimes these won't be exact. It'll just give you a good baseline to go off of to start off your maintenance calories with. And then you set your TDEE based off of those numbers. So let's say you plug your results in, you get this number. Okay, now you know how, like if you were to eat 3,000 calories, that would be about 360 calories surplus, right? If you were to eat 2,000 calories, that would be about a 642 deficit. So knowing your TDEE, or quote-unquote maintenance calories, is crucial to knowing, to being able to see how big of a deficit you create when you're eating. So now that you kind of know your TDEE, or quote-unquote maintenance calories, now when you determine your goal, you can set your calorie target each day. So if your goal is to lose fat, subtract 200 to 800 from your TDEE. Because our goal is to lose fat, we need to be eating less than our body burns each day, so that excess energy amount is pulled from our fat. And the reason why that will be pulled from our fat is if you're eating enough protein, which I'll get to in a little bit, and resistance training. Because essentially our body needs that energy from somewhere, so it'll look to your muscle, even just something as simple as water weight and fat. But if we're eating enough protein, giving our muscle building blocks, and training, giving our muscle a reason to actually stay there and grow, then your body will just burn that energy from the fat rather than taking away your muscle. So a helpful deficit to have when losing fat is anywhere from 200 to 800. Even 800 is a little bit on the bigger side, but that is a good amount to subtract from your TDEE if you're trying to lose fat. So for context, in about 1 pound of fat, there's about 3,500 calories. And ultimately, when you're eating, let's say 800 calorie deficit each day, it'll take about 4.5 days for you to lose 1 pound of fat, if all that weight loss was from fat itself, if that makes sense. Next up is, if your goal is to build muscle, you should be in a surplus, and you should probably add around 200 to 800 to your TDEE. And the goal of being in a surplus is so that your body can use those excess nutrients, excess protein, excess carbs to create an energy imbalance where your body needs to put on weight, and it just creates an anabolic situation for your body to put on more muscle. So you're gaining weight via muscle, ideally not from fat. And then lastly, if it's both, it's definitely easier to do this as a beginner. So subtracting even just 0 to 250 from your total daily energy expenditure can be helpful for just losing fat and building muscle at a much slower rate. And the goal is to just have your maintenance calories or just slightly below, and just keeping relatively the same weight over time, but increasing your muscle mass slowly but surely as you stay lean. Especially if you're a beginner, I would just say to pick either losing fat or building muscle, and then add the according numbers to your maintenance calories. So now that we kind of know how calories works, let's get into macros. So within calories, there are 3 different macros. You've probably heard of them: carbs, protein, and fats. So carbs, these are your body's primary energy source. So you eat something high in carbs, your body immediately goes, okay, let me use this for energy. Carbs are broken down into glucose, and then kind of stored in your glycogen storages, and there's fast digesting versus slow digesting carbs, and the carbs are really helpful to have both before and after your workout. So some examples of some carbs that you could have before your workout is some rice or bread, Those are kind of more fast digesting carbs versus something like oats or fruit, which is a little bit slower digesting. Next up is protein, and in 1 gram of protein there is 4 calories. That's the same as carbs. 1 gram of carb, there's 4 calories. The role of protein is building and repairing tissues, as well as so many other key functional processes that your body does each and every day. So protein is broken down into amino acids, which are essentially the building blocks for your muscle. Protein is also used for many different enzymatic functions, and the best thing about protein is that it's the most satiating macronutrient. So this means if you eat a meal high in protein, you're going to feel more full and satiated rather than, let's say, eating a meal high in carbs. Some really good protein sources are chicken breasts, red meat, non-fat Greek yogurt, and protein powder. And then fats. Fats are unlike protein and carbs, where protein and carbs are 4 calories per gram. Fats are 9 calories per gram. So they're a lot more dense and higher calorie per gram of fat. So the role of fats is ultimately for long-term energy and your hormone functions. These are broken down into fatty acids, and these are super key for your hormones. It's super useful for long-term energy and helps absorb nutrients. So for example, like if you didn't get that much fats in, or if you like ate 0 fats each and every day, your testosterone would take a hit, your hormones would be all jumbled up, and you just wouldn't feel like your body's optimized each and every day. Some good fats are avocados, nuts, butters, olive oil, but at the end of the day, the main thing to be aware of with fats is that they're a lot higher in calories, right? So something like, even just like 10 nuts can be so much more calories than maybe a whole bowl of rice or a ton of chicken breast. So now I'm going to kind of go into more of each of these different macros and kind of what to aim for each and every day, along with a ton of different sources to go for. So with protein, a good healthy target to go for each and every day is 0.8 to 1 grams of protein per pound of body weight. And this oftentimes equates to about like 30 to 40% of your calories. So for example, if you're 250 pounds, wanting to go down to 190 pounds, a good amount of protein to go for each day would be 152 to 190, honestly even as all the way up to 250 grams of protein each day. One of the number one mistakes that I see people make when progressing towards their fat loss or muscle building goals is that they're simply not getting enough protein in. Something as simple as getting enough protein in can make it much easier for your body to be in an anabolic state, to put on muscle, or just be satiated, for you to have less temptations or hunger cravings when you're losing fat. And here are some amazing sources, and just like a little chart that you can use for some great protein sources. So as you kind of go down this little graph or table here, you're going to get more higher cal protein sources. But some of the top sources of protein is chicken breast, egg whites, non-fat Greek yogurt, turkey breast, cottage cheese, shrimp, lean ground beef, etc. You can kind of pause this right here and see kind of which things you like, or even just search up different recipes online that have maybe some of these key protein sources as the main focus of the dish. Next up is fats. So fats, you're basically going to fill the rest of your carbs or rest of your calories with carbs and fats after you set your protein in. And your fats can range anywhere from about 50 to 90 grams of fats each day, and these typically equate to about 20 to 40% of your calories depending on how much you have. So for example, like in our example with the guy here, he's 250 pounds, wanting to go down to 190 pounds, around 60 grams of fats could be really helpful for this guy. Here are a ton of good sources of fats, especially something like Greek yogurt or salmon has a ton of great omega-6 fatty acids in there. These are just some great sources to have each day, just to make sure, like I said earlier, you're not just absolutely tanking your hormones via a lack of good, healthy fats. Next up is carbs. So essentially, after you fill a lot of your calories with your protein and fat content, you typically can just fill the rest with carbs. A lot of people like to just set the protein first, and then they can kind of play around with the fats and carbs. Some people have, they just like more fattier foods, so they tend to have higher fats and maybe not as much carbs. Some people like more higher carb things, so they'll just have more carbs and less fats. But ultimately, at the end of the day, as long as you're getting in that 50 to 90 grams of fats and you're getting in your protein, the rest you can just kind of fill up with carbs. So for in our little example right here, the man being 250 pounds, wanting to go to 190 pounds, Typically a good amount for his carb intake would be anywhere from like 30 to 50%. So for example, that could be something like 213 grams of carbs would be a good amount for this guy. A lot of times we can just paint carbs as an enemy when in reality they are super crucial just for fueling our muscles and even our mind as well, just in our daily activities. So here are some good sources of carbs. You may see like candy on here and think like, oh my gosh, what the heck? Why is candy a good source of carbs? Well, one really beneficial aspect of something like candy, or even something like pancakes, white rice, sourdough, these more faster acting carbs are really beneficial to have both before, during, and after a workout, because essentially your body breaks them down a lot quicker and they're able just to flood your muscles and glycogen stores with readily available nutrients to use to either for your workouts for fuel or afterwards for recovery purposes. So that's just kind of carbs in a nutshell. Ultimately, at the end of the day, this is something that you kind of fill the rest of your calories with after you've already got the more important protein and fat amounts set. So now that you guys kind of know about macros and calories in general, how do we actually set our macros and calories on a practical standpoint? So first of all, you're going to want to set your calorie target like I kind of mentioned earlier. You can either follow the formula or you can use the calculator like I mentioned, or at the end of the day, if you don't really want to go through a bit of effort that goes through that, you can also just use one of these. So essentially, if you want to lose fat, you can multiply your body weight by 12 to 13 if you want to start losing fat, or if you want to maybe start building muscle in a surplus, you can multiply your body weight simply by 16 to 18 if you want to just get a generic kind of calorie target to be aiming for each day to kind of set that baseline for you. Then after you have your calories, you're going to want to set your macros. So like I kind of mentioned earlier, protein 0.8 to 1 times your body weight. That's probably the most important thing to set first, just so you can kind of base off your fats off of that initial protein content. So then once you set your protein, getting in your fat content, maybe 20-30% total calories, or even just a flat number in between 50 and 90 grams, and then fill the rest of your calories with carbs. So one free app that I use that is completely free that you can actually use right now, it only just has some ads on there, but it is Chronometer. And this is one of my most favorite apps for tracking calories because not only is it free, but the database and just software interface itself of the app is super clean and efficient. So you can even actually pause this video right now and download Chronometer, and you can literally start using it right now. And if you want, I can walk you guys through exactly how to input your macro and calorie targets. So step one, download the app. Then once you open up the app, you can go on the bottom right to where it says more, and then it should say targets at the top, and then you're going to want to click on macro and energy targets. Then after you do that, you'll go to this page, and at the top click on fixed, and then where it says custom energy target, go ahead and toggle that on. And then that basically allows us to set custom macro and calorie targets. So essentially what you're going to do is just plug and play what your protein, carbs, and fats were that you figured out from above, and you're just going to want to plug those in right here, and then your custom calorie target right there. And the reason why like essentially we turned on this custom energy target is sometimes it's helpful to have just a minimum or maximum amount here for the grams. And one way to see if you kind of did this correctly is if this number right here where it says 2,475 is very close, if not the same as this number right here. So this number right here is essentially all of these grams of the different macros added up according to the calories per gram. So like I mentioned earlier, carbs and protein have 4 calories per gram and fats have 9 calories per gram. So it's essentially just multiplying 4 times 200, 4 times 250 plus 9 times 75 would get you that number. Okay, and that's as simple as it is. And then you can start using and plugging and playing on the app, just tracking your calories accordingly, and I'll kind of get to that in a little bit. But ultimately at the end of the day, no matter how much of an effort you go to set your calorie or macro targets, especially your calories are not always going to be exactly perfect to what you're kind of expecting. So there's always a little bit of room for error when you set your calorie targets. Like maybe you set something and you're eating 400 calorie deficit, when in reality that 400 calorie deficit is your maintenance. So as such, we need to first of all make sure we're tracking accurately, just so we kind of know that we're eating what we think we are, so then we can kind of make adjustments accordingly. And then beware of like changing your calories so quick just because you gain a bunch of weight in 1 week or lose a bunch of weight in 1 week, because a lot of times, especially in quick bouts of time, you can gain or lose a lot of water weight, and that's not necessarily fat. So keep that in mind when you do want to make a change. The only thing that I would change is if after 2 to 4 weeks your weight still isn't moving, kind of staying the same, that just ultimately means, like I kind of talked about earlier, is that you're eating at your maintenance. So there's no surplus or deficit for your body to kind of fix that energy imbalance. So as a result, just go small. Like for example, if you're not losing weight after 4 weeks of consistently tracking your calories, decrease it by like 150 to 200 more calories, and then measure it again, and then kind of go through that process. Same thing if you're trying to gain weight but you're kind of maintaining, if not losing weight, bump up those calories a little bit. I would say just don't make too much of a big bump, just so that you kind of can ensure that all the variables you're tracking accurately and not making these big swings constantly, and ultimately just being consistent in general. So that's just kind of setting your macros and calories in general. And now that we kind of know macros and plus calories, how do we like actually track calories? So the good thing is that this is very, very easy once you understand it. So on each and every pretty much thing of food, you're gonna see either a label or a barcode. And so it could look something like this on this pizza here. It's gonna show you the calories, fats, carbs, protein. Same thing with the arrowheads, peanut butter as well. Pretty much everything's gonna have a nutrition label. But then also there's gonna be a barcode as well. Keep note of that because that's super beneficial when you're actually tracking your calories via the app. So here's what a nutrition label looks like. It may look super confusing at first, but let me break it down for you. So at the top left, there's always going to be the total servings for the container. So in this little example, there's like 8 servings per container. In this pizza, 4 servings, 9 servings, and 14 servings. So they're always going to tell you the total amount of servings combined in that one little container or whatnot, just so you can kind of get an idea of how many there are. And then it's going to tell you the serving size. And often it'll tell you the serving size in 2 different ways. First of all, in grams, just so you can get a little bit more of a precise measurement. And then in cups or pieces or something more broad, just so you can kind of be accurate with your serving sizes, especially if you're measuring out your food. So that's important to notice, is the serving size and the total servings. And then next up is the calories. This is often going to be the biggest bold text. And in this case, it's 230 calories. And then the only kind of most important measures you need to look at is just simply the macros. So fats up at the top, carbs in the middle, and protein at the bottom. So that helps you kind of read a nutrition label, especially like if you're looking at the grocery store, seeing if something has a lot of protein, you can kind of easily glance through here. A good rule of thumb is like the 10-to-1 rule, where let's say, for example, 200, let's say this had 200 calories. If you wanted to look for something high in protein, you're looking for something for like 20 or more calories. So 20 times 10 is 200, so that kind of 10-to-1 rule applies if you're looking for something with good macros and a lot of protein. So now, how do we actually track our calories? Well, step 1 is actually getting an app. So like I said, you can get the Chronometer app, like I said earlier, completely free, and it has free barcode scanning. That's why I like it better than MyFitnessPal, because MyFitnessPal, you actually have to pay for the barcode scanning, and scanning a barcode makes tracking calories 10 times more easy. So I would highly recommend getting something where you don't have to pay for the barcode scanner unless you do have the budget for it. So that's where I would suggest Macro Factor coming into play. I would definitely suggest this over MyFitnessPal because there's additional metrics that you can track and kind of have almost like a little mini coach in the app as you go that adjusts your calories as needed. So step 1, get an app. Then you're going to want to get a food scale. This may seem like super like, why would I get a food scale? Like, that's dumb. But this is one of the most essential aspects to accurately tracking your calories. So on Amazon, it's literally only $10, and that $10 has a huge payoff because you'll be able to accurately track your food and not just kind of be guessing in like cups or whatnot, but actually going down to the gram and kind of seeing actually what you're putting into your body rather than just kind of more so guessing. But that's exactly where scanning the barcode comes into play. So for example, let's say you wanted to track some peanut butter. Well, you would get your plate, you'd get the app out or the bowl or whatever, get the app out, get the food scale, then you would click on the app, the plus sign, add food, and then you're going to click scan barcode, and then it's as easy as it sounds. Scan the barcode on whatever food you're looking for, in this case the peanut butter, and then you're just going to put your bowl on the weight scale, and then as you scoop the peanut butter into the weight scale, the weight's going to go up, and then once you feel like you're done putting the peanut butter on there, however much you're going to have, or you're trying to measure out a serving size, all you're going to do is look at that number on the weight scale, and then you're going to input that serving size or the weight onto the app itself, and then you're going to click done, and then it's that easy. So a lot of times it's just scanning the barcode, just making this really simple for you guys. Scan the barcode, weigh the food out, or look at the portion size, measure that out, and then add it into the app. And that's kind of the same process for all the foods that you'll be eating. So that ultimately is how you are able to fuel your body properly for stewardship with your nutrition. Next up is form and exercise. So here are just some basics of exercising itself and what that actually looks like on a practical basis. So first off, how do we actually build muscle? Well, the way I like to describe how we build muscle is very similar to how construction workers build a house. So what are like the three things that someone needs to build a house? Well, first of all, a blueprint or plan that shows out the actual step-by-step of how to actually build a house. And then you need materials to actually build the physical house itself. And then lastly, you need time or consistency, because you can't just chuck together a brick house in like a day or two. It needs time to actually be built. In the same way, muscle takes a blueprint or plan, and in this case, it's basically a training split or exercise selection, which I'll get to in a little bit. The next aspect, like the materials, is your protein, your body using amino acids to actually build that new muscle tissue. And then lastly, time and consistency. Building muscle takes time. It's not just a one night, 1 week thing, but it's a consistent act over time that will ultimately yield you results. So here are some common a common few words and terms that you might see pop up along your fitness journey that I just kind of wanted to touch on, just so you guys aren't taken aback if you see these on, let's say, a YouTube video or even just doing the gym in and of itself. You'll kind of see these pop up everywhere. So first of all, form. Like, this is the way an exercise is done, and proper form would essentially be doing an exercise properly. And the reason why we want good form is because it will, number one, limit the risk for injury, and number two, it'll actually target the target muscle. So form is really crucial if you want to actually perform an exercise properly, so that you'll get the maximum stimulus and the least risk for injury. Next up is progressive overload, and all this is adding weight or reps over time. So it's essentially just improving through the gym, because at the end of the day, your muscles need a new stimulus to actually grow. You can't just be doing the same exercise over and over again and expect yourself to grow, right? So progressive overload, I'll get to that in a little bit as well, is just adding load over time through weight or reps. Next up is tempo, and this is basically just the speed at which a rep is done. So think about a bench press. If you're just benching really fast, that's fast tempo. But if you're going slower on the reps, that's like slower tempo. And then rate of perceived exertion, RPE. This is essentially just a scale of 1 to 10 that kind of gauges the difficulty of how hard that set was. So for example, maybe I do a set of squats, and after I am completely tired, I could not do another squat. Maybe I failed on the way up. That's an RPE 10. Like, I had 0 reps in reserve, couldn't do any more. Whereas maybe if I did a set of squats, finished pretty easily, could have probably done like 5 or 6 more. Maybe that's a RPE of like 5 to 6. And the reason why the RPE scale is kind of important is because it kind of gauges you how hard you're actually training. Then range of motion, or ROM, and this is the extent to which a joint or muscle can stretch or move. So in the context of like a bench press, you could even see at the gym several people like stop the bench press below they even touch their chest. So they're just stopping that range of motion short. And especially when you're wanting to provide your muscle with the maximum stimulus to grow and given an actual good reason to grow, you want to get into that full stretch position, that full range of motion. And this applies to pretty much every single muscle group, is really milking that range of motion and strengthening that muscle in that stretch position. And the next step is failure. So a lot of times if you want to actually build muscle, we need to be going to failure and training hard. So that ultimately means kind of like what I was saying earlier is a RPE 9 to 10. So those are some basic terms that you'll kind of see and need to focus on as you kind of go about your training. But I also just kind of wanted to go in some key focuses in your training and that you can actually apply right away. So number one, kind of like I said, good form. Focus on having good form for each rep. Do proper research or exercise or have a coach that's able to kind of touch on some good form just so you're able to target the muscle effectively and also not risk yourself for injury. So that way you don't have to be worried about tearing something that could have been prevented just by simply having good form. Number two, progressive overload. Focus each week on improving some sort of aspect of your training routine, whether it's increasing the weight or the reps or both. So for example, this is kind of what a progressive overload progression could look like. Is on day one, the first time you do an exercise, you do 100 pounds for 7 reps. And you cannot do any more, 7 reps was your failure and that was it. And then the next time you do that exercise, maybe you try to do 110 pounds, increase 10 more pounds than 100 for the same amount of reps. Or maybe you want to go to the rep route and you keep the same weight and try to do 1 more rep. Ultimately, just progressing either weight or reps is a really good focus to have for all your different exercises each time you go to the gym. So that way you're not just kind of staying the same, but you're actually progressing over time. Which leads me into number 3, intense training. So after you warm up, you shouldn't just kind of go all in on your first set just to prevent injury risk, but ultimately warming up your joints, going light on some sets, and then once you actually start your working sets, that should be pretty intense. You should be training at least like an RPE 8 to 10, so maybe 2 reps left, or ideally really just training to failure, right? Because if we're not training hard enough, our muscles don't have necessarily a good reason to grow, and therefore they just won't. So if you want to actually maximize the season and the time that you have in the gym, train to failure, kill the flesh, push your body hard. Number 4, kind of like I touched on, full range of motion. So in order to maximize growth, we need to perform each exercise with adequate range of motion. So all that means is not stopping short, but exaggerating and emphasizing the deep stretch portion of a rep. So for example, if you're doing an incline dumbbell press, go all the way down, even past your pecs, and then kind of almost pause there at the bottom for a sec, and then go up. But one important thing to note about, especially when doing full range of motion, especially on cables or machines, is to not let the weight rest on something in between a set. So I see some people even just think about on a machine bench press, they'll do a rep and then they'll bring it back and they'll let it rest on the machine for a little bit and then go back up. Maybe it rests, even if it's 0.5 seconds. That basically takes all the tension off the target muscle and removes that friction, and you're not going to get as good of a stimulus. Number 5 is consistency. In order to build muscle, we need to stay consistent. Don't be switching up your workouts 1 to 3 weeks after you start it just because you feel it's not making much progress. Ultimately, if you have progressive overload over time, you are guaranteed to build muscle, especially if you're eating enough protein and you're in a calorie surplus. So ultimately, have a plan and a routine and exercise split that fits your schedule and maybe addresses your weak points or your focuses to your preferences. So that's where having an accountability partner or gym buddy or a coach to keep you accountable is really helpful for building up that muscle of consistency. Number 7 is just keeping track. So track your progress just to see if you're progressing, right? You cannot measure what you don't track. So take note of the weight, your sets, the reps of each workout to see, okay, what do I need to improve on? What am I kind of regressing on even? Just to kind of know and just keep track of everything in that sense. So just a simple little checklist of what to keep track of. First off, your PRs, your best amount of reps or weight that you did on a certain exercise. And then even just generally, just everything, just your reps, sets, and weight per workout. Just kind of, you can do it in your notes app or on a piece of paper. Just writing down, okay, for my push day, X amount of weight on bench press, Y amount of reps, okay. Lateral raises, X amount of weight, Y amount of reps, Z amount of sets. And then progress photos, not just so you can kind of check yourself out all the time, but ultimately to kind of see where am I maybe not improving on? Am I just staying the same? Am I not actually improving? Because a lot of times your weight can fluctuate, but one of the best ways to actually see if you're making progress in the right direction is through progress photos. And then lastly, obviously calories, macros, and body weight, just to kind of keep those variables under the microscope. Lastly, 8, rest. One key thing is that we need to be giving our muscles adequate time to recover. So don't train the same muscle group like back-to-back days. Give your muscles like about 24 to 48 hours, depending on the muscle group, to actually recover. So for example, like if you hit back on Monday, it would be wise not to hit back again on Tuesday, the very next day, right? And then another note on this is also giving enough rest time in between sets. Typically aim for like 1.5 to 3 minutes, because another huge mistake I see people make is just finishing a set, maybe waiting 30 seconds and immediately going to the next set. So one easy way for you to actually know if you're ready for the next set is, one, either setting a timer for at least 1.5 to 3 minutes, or doing this checklist. So first of all, are you no longer breathing heavily? Like after a set, before you start the next one, ask yourself, am I breathing heavily, or is my breathing more controlled? Second one, is your target muscle going to be the limiting factor in this new set? If yes, then it could be good to go. And then, can you perform your target rep range with good form? Like, do you feel like your actual muscles will be able to get to that 8 to 12 rep range, or do you feel like you'll fall short? Or like, do you need to rest a little bit more so that then you can be ready? And then lastly, are you like mentally ready for the next set? Like, or are you physically drained, like you don't think you can go? Or like, okay, I'm ready, let's do this. That's kind of like a helpful checklist to have for when you're ready for your next set. So then that leads us to the training split. So first off, what is a training split? Well, it's basically just a method of organizing your workouts into specific muscle groups, body parts, or movement patterns on different days. So for example, maybe on Monday you do chest, Tuesday is back, and then Wednesday you do arms, rest, and then repeat that cycle again. And the whole point of a training split is to ultimately target different like specific muscle groups, to fatigue them, to train them with enough volume, and then also to avoid the risk of injury by giving them an adequate time to recover for the next workout. So ultimately that helps you with reducing the risk of over and under training by actually having a system in place that helps you progress over time for each muscle group. So some example training splits that are pretty common today is like push, pull, legs, rest, upper, lower, rest, chest, back, arms, legs, shoulders, rest, and then upper body, lower body, rest, push, pull, legs, rest, repeat. So all a split is just a cycle of oftentimes hitting each muscle group either once, twice, or 1.5 times per week. So you might be thinking like, okay, I understand kind of what a training split is, but now how do I actually choose a training split? Well, these are just some key things to consider when picking a training split. Number one, like what's your goal? What's your motive? Are you trying to build muscle, or are you trying to lose fat right now? So when we're trying to build muscle, a higher volume split can be helpful, just to utilize those excess carbs, calories, macros in general, for like taking advantage of those excess calories and carbs and protein. So that's important to note. If you're trying to lose fat, maybe working out 6 days a week probably isn't as wise, instead of just choosing to maybe do 3, 4, or 5 days a week just to maintain that muscle. So first off, are you building muscle or losing fat? If you're building muscle, it would be wise to maybe do a higher frequency split instead of a lower frequency one. Number two is schedule. This is really important because if your schedule doesn't even allow you to do a certain split, it wouldn't be good to choose that one. So first off, think about yourself, your schedule. How many days can you work out? That'll kind of give you a good range to be able to see which split you're able to do. And for context, more is not always better, and 3 days is plenty to make a ton of progress. Number three to consider when choosing a training split is weak points. Like, is there a certain muscle group that you want to focus on during this time? And then as such, you can kind of choose or create a split that allows you to hit that muscle group with higher volume or greater intensity. And then, like, for example, like maybe you want to work on your chest, so you do a chest heavy split, or maybe you want to really focus on your strength, or maybe your squats, or just strength in general, and you can really make a strength focused split. Or maybe you want to work on your legs, so you have a legs emphasis split. There's endless possibilities there. Number four is enjoyment. Like, what do you actually enjoy doing? Like, it shouldn't be something where you just absolutely dread going to the gym every day. Like, in one sense, yes, discipline will not maybe be as enjoyable in the short term, but over the long run, it produces something much greater. But at the end of the day, like, Inherent inconsistency is making the process as easy as possible and removing any and all barriers such that it's more easy to actually exercise self-control and discipline. So part of a good training split is something that you actually enjoy and you look forward to completing rather than it being such a drag. So like, how can you make the process itself more enjoyable by maybe choosing a training split that not only fits your schedule and hits your weak points, but also is enjoyable. And then lastly, experience and training level. Like, there's no need to do a fancy training split when you're just starting off. Like, keep it simple. Like, there's so many splits online and we can kind of get caught up in optimizing everything. But as long as you just start making progress and keep the basics in the back of your mind, you're going to be fine. So that's kind of the training splits aspect. Here are some example splits that I actually put down right here that you can actually copy right now. So the first one is push-pull legs. This is a little bit of a higher frequency one, 5 to 6 days a week. So like Sunday is rest, Monday is a push workout with chest, shoulders, triceps. Tuesday, pull workout, back biceps. And then Wednesday, there's leg day A with the quad focus, and then kind of repeat that cycle again with Saturday being leg day B with more of a hamstring focus. And the reason why push-pull legs is so popular is just because there's so many different, there's just a lot of different variations you can do within it. And then also just the frequency aspect, you're hitting each muscle group twice a week, or even like if you wanted to make this 3 days a week, you could do a push day on Monday, a pull day on Wednesday, and then a leg day on Friday, which will give you a lot more time and flexibility within your schedule. The next one, a little bit less frequency, but upper lower. This is 4 days a week, and you're hitting each muscle group twice a week. So upper on Monday, maybe you're hitting the chest focus upper day with back, shoulders, arms. Tuesday, lower with the quad focus, also hitting hamstrings, glutes. Wednesday, resting. And then Thursday, another upper day, but this time with a back focus, also hitting your arms, chest, and shoulders again. Lower again with a hamstring focus, and then resting again on Saturday. So as you can kind of see right here, like this upper lower split really shows you giving enough time for your muscle groups to rest. So you hit your chest on Monday and your back, shoulders, arms, so your upper body. So now at 24 hours, Tuesday, you're hitting something else, right? And then even again, 24 hours again on Wednesday. This is 48 hours in between. Okay, now 72 hours between hitting back or chest and then hitting them again on Thursday. Next up is full body. This is typically only 3 to 4 days a week, gives a lot more flexibility with your schedule and still is able to hit enough frequency and volume with your different muscle groups. So Monday, full body, and these kind of full bodies can look different each time. Monday full body is a chest focus with shoulders and quads. Wednesday's full body is maybe a back focus with arms, hamstrings, and glutes. And then Friday is maybe a quad focus with chest, arms, and back. So that's just kind of some example splits that you can put into your routine and start seeing results quickly. But even better than that, I've actually gone through and created some actual workout programs for you that you can literally implement today to start seeing results and actually practice in the gym yourself. So one of them is a little bit more advanced and one of them is a little bit more simple and beginner friendly. So I'll go ahead and get into these right now. So workout program A, this is the little bit more advanced one. The split is a little bit different than push-pull legs, and I'll kind of explain that to you guys right now. So instead of push-pull legs, it's essentially push with biceps and not triceps, and pull with triceps and not biceps. So if you see right here, Sunday you rest, and then Monday it's chest, shoulders, and biceps. So a typical push day, like if you look up here, would be chest, shoulders, and triceps. And the reason why I switched triceps for biceps is because a lot of times in your different push movements, like doing chest press or shoulder presses, you're often indirectly using your triceps in those exercises. So that's why doing it on something where like you're focusing on your back, you can hit your triceps with more of a fresh focus rather than kind of indirectly hitting them through your chest and shoulders and then hitting them again. In this kind of new split, it allows you to hit them almost like both days, like one indirectly on Monday, maybe they're not too sore for Tuesday, and then you can really go all in on them on Tuesday. Same thing with your biceps, you hit them fresh on Monday, and then you're really can focus on your back more and not as much as your biceps, because on something like a pull-up or a row, you're still kind of using your biceps indirectly. So that's why it can be so helpful for kind of switching biceps and triceps. So that's kind of some background on the split itself, but this is what it looks like. I won't go through every single exercise, just explaining it to you guys right here. So you can take screenshots or video record this part, or You can just kind of watch this video slowly, write it down in your notes app or whatever it might be. But here's Monday, chest, shoulders, and biceps. Tuesday, back and triceps. Take a screenshot or pause it. Wednesday, leg day, a quad focus leg day. Making sure just to warm up properly, especially for legs. Thursday, once again, chest, shoulders, and biceps. Then Friday, back and triceps. And then finally, Saturday, leg day with a hamstring focus. So that's the little bit more advanced, a little bit higher volume workout split. And here's workout program B. And this is a lot more beginner friendly. It's only 3 days a week and it's a full body split. So each full body split is a little bit different. It has a little bit different exercises, but it's still pretty much hitting most of your body part groups each time you go. So for example, Monday, full body, you can take a screenshot right here. Tuesday is a rest day. Wednesday, full body again, a little bit of a different focus. And one of the best things with full body is you're only kind of going to the gym 3 days a week, and you almost sometimes feel like you're having more of a full session just because you're hitting more muscle groups, and sometimes people really like hitting their chest or something. So doing full body kind of allows you to hit chest almost like 3 times a week. Maybe it's only 1 set per workout, but still you're getting in some good chest work there. And then lastly, Friday, full body, last one of the week. And then so for your rest days, you can either completely rest, not do anything, but I would highly recommend either doing some type of active rest, whether that be a walk, maybe not a super intense run, just a light jog, or maybe it's one of the best things that I love doing is something like a sport like pickleball. Like not super intense, but it'll get those calories burning and still kind of discipline you in actually getting active for that day. And then one easy thing you can do is just walk on the incline treadmill. A good setting is like 30 to 60 minutes, 2.7 speed, 11 incline. That'll really do it for you. And then the Stairmaster if you're. So those are the 2 workouts. I hope like if you put them into practice and you actually stay consistent with them, that you'll make a ton of progress. So that now that we kind of have our both fuel and form down in terms of our nutrition through calories, macros, and actually tracking those calories and setting them accordingly, and then our exercise with both the basics of exercise, training split, example splits, and then some workout programs for y'all. Here is the last component of the 10-5 method, is the foundation aspect with our habits. So first off, with sleep, sleep is one of the most overlooked habits that makes such a big difference in our lives. A famous CrossFitter once said, like, if sleep was a performance enhancing drug, it would be the best one on the market. All that goes to say that sleep is one of, if not the most important thing that you will do in your fitness journey that will give you the most amount of progress and move the needle the most. So just to kind of briefly go over some of the benefits of sleep. First off, just memory consolidation. You'll be able to memorize things faster, have a better recall with your brain, just more sharp mental clarity in general. Next up is insulin sensitivity. So when you eat, for example, something high in sugar, you won't have such a big rise and fall. It'll be a little bit more stable throughout the day. Restoration, repair, just with your overall body and recovery. One of the most important processes that needs to happen for you to gain muscle is muscle protein synthesis, and a bulk of this happens during your sleep. Next up is immune system report, or immune system strength in general. Just the more quality and quantity sleep you get, your immune system is going to be more strengthened and just supported well. Next up, hormone regulation. So cortisol, your stress hormone, leptin and ghrelin, your satiety and hunger hormones, and then your growth hormone will all be optimized as a result of good sleep. And then rest and recovery, kind of like I touched on, and then enhanced creativity and problem solving, just because of all the mental benefits of good sleep. And then lastly, getting good quality sleep in on a consistent basis is almost like a form of self-control. Like there is an aspect of planning, of discipline, of going to bed each night at a certain time and waking up ideally at that same time the next day, and ultimately like shutting off the screens, stop scrolling on social media so that you can get to bed at an adequate time. So now that we kind of know the benefits of sleep, what are some of the consequences of limited sleep? Well, the first one is increased hunger and cravings. So two hormones that get negatively impacted when you have a lack of sleep is leptin and ghrelin. So leptin is produced by your fat cells, and this is essentially your satiety hormone. So when you have a big meal, your leptin basically says, okay, I am satiated, I am full. And the problem when you don't get enough sleep is that your leptin levels drop, and because of that, your satiety signals are weakened. And then on top of that, your ghrelin is disrupted as well and rises. It's produced by your stomach. And this essentially is your hunger hormone. And due to that rise in ghrelin, you're going to feel hungrier both earlier and more often. So these is a really bad combo and just overall bad situation to find yourself in, because your satiety is going to be down, but your hunger is going to be up. So not only are you going to be more hungry and have more cravings throughout the day, but also when you do end up even eating those cravings or having a meal, you're not going to feel as full and satiated. So it's just also going to give you a lot more temptations and cravings to eat more food, just to even especially fall into gluttony, or it's going to make it a lot harder to stay in a calorie deficit if you are trying to lose fat. On top of this, your food reward is going to skyrocket. You're going to get a lot more cravings, especially for things like sugar and processed food. And then in general, you're just going to have worse impulse control. And it's going to be just way harder to exercise calorie and self-control when you're cutting. And then on the flip side, it's going to make it a lot more easy to indulge in gluttony and just excess calorie surplus on the other side of that coin if you are trying to bulk. So that's number one, increased hunger and cravings. Number two is decreased self-control. So emotional regulation declines, irritability increases, impulsivity increases, and temptation just feels so much louder when you do get just a lack of sleep. So not only does this affect something like overeating and gluttony, kind of like I talked about earlier, but this expands into the rest of your life and can affect things like laziness, sexual temptations, anger, harsh speech, escapism through things like scrolling, binging, and numbing. At the end of the day, sleep just invites the enemy in to so many other aspects of our lives, whereas just the simple act of getting enough good quality sleep not only helps with our fitness, but also ultimately in our walk with Christ in general. Number three is just messed up hormones. Three hormones in addition to leptin and ghrelin that are all negatively impacted is testosterone, growth hormone, and cortisol. So as a result of a drop in testosterone, you're just going to have increased fat storage. It's going to be harder to build and retain muscle. And you're going to have more brain fog, persistent fatigue and low energy, sexual dysfunction, and low motivation. In general, having optimized testosterone levels will really help with a vast majority of our problems, especially as we age as men. Next up, your growth hormone is going to drop, and growth hormone is essential for your muscle, not only just the preservation of it, but also putting on new muscle. So as a result, with a decrease in your growth hormone due to a lack of sleep, you're going to have reduced muscle mass, just poor recovery in general, thinning skin, and then also just some social isolation due to the mental problems with that. And then lastly, cortisol, your stress hormone, that's going to increase as well. And because of that, you're going to have increased fat storage, decreased muscle mass, and just frequent sickness and just a bad immune system. And then also, again, increased temptation. And one thing I do want to note on is I keep on saying like increased fat storage and decreased muscle mass. And that could trigger some of you guys in saying like, oh, if we're not training for looks, if that's not something that we're focusing on, why does it matter if we have more muscle or less fat? And that is a great question. And that's exactly why in my next video, I'm going to be going over why should Christians build muscle, why should Christians lose fat, kind of going back to those whys and motives, and actually breaking down some of the science of actually like what does it look like for us as Christians to, why should we have that desire to build muscle or lose fat, and is that even a biblical desire? Is like fitness or working out a sin in general? That's what I'm going to be going into my next video. So that's a good thing to keep in mind as we kind of go through these benefits and disadvantages. Number 4 of having not a good enough sleep is an impaired mind. So your mental is just going to take a big hit if you're not getting enough sleep. Not only are you going to have cognitive impairment, but just also memory loss and just overall lack of mental clarity, focus, and sharpness. Just a lot more mental fogginess in general. You're not going to feel as sharp, readily available, and just it's going to be way harder to focus in general. And this essentially invites the enemy into your life in so many different ways. It just prones you to a lack of self-control, makes you fall into temporary comforts more often, old sin patterns, just impaired decision making in general, increased comparison to others, and also a risk of deception, of maybe not necessarily being able to easily distinguish between the shepherd's voice and then some subtle lies of the enemy. So those are kind of four, there's a lot more, but four of some of the key consequences of limited sleep. So now that we know both the benefits and consequences of limited sleep, how do we actually get good sleep? So right here I put down 9 kind of easy ways and practices that you can easily put into your routine tonight to get better sleep. So number 1 is setting a circadian rhythm. And this is essentially your body's internal clock that basically tells your body when to wake up and when to go to bed, even like without an alarm. So to set this really just properly and efficiently, ideally go to bed and wake up at the same time each day and night, so that way your body kind of gets used to a consistent routine and structure, so then that it can kind of get used to waking up and going to bed around the same time. So then internally your body kind of can predict, okay, this is when it's going to bed, this is when it's waking up, so that it can kind of plan its sleep cycles around that. One easy way to do this is just to get morning sunlight after you wake up. Morning sunlight is really helpful for setting your body's circadian rhythm. Just getting those sunlights into your eyes and starting off your day with that is really helpful for setting that internal clock in your body. Number 2 is the 3-2-1 rule. So 3 hours before bed, no more heavy meals. If you do get hungry though, have a light snack, not something really heavy, especially something that's really high in fats. No more heavy exercise 3 hours before bed. And then 2 hours before bed, no more fluids. Dim the lights and kind of start to relax and wind down for the night. And then 1 hour before bed, get off all screens, put on blue light blockers or software if you need to, take a hot shower if needed, and then read or meditate. So this is not like a drop dead must do rule list. However, it is a good checklist to follow if you are trying to get better sleep. The 3-2-1 rule will really help you with that. Number 3 is optimizing your temperature. So one key aspect that our bodies do when it's time to go to bed is lowering our core body temperature. So some ways that you can do that is just a warm shower or a sauna. Basically that heat will raise your core body temperature and then drop quickly afterwards after you get out, and it'll cool down pretty quickly. And then also just simply decreasing your room temperature. One of the most like optimal degrees that you can set your room to is about like 65 to 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Anywhere from like 60 to 70 degrees is just a good room temp to set to allow your body to not be overheating and not be super cold during the night as well, and ultimately just optimizing your body's core body temperature to be optimized for sleep. Number four is light. So first of all, eliminate or block out blue light entirely. So when you go to sleep, you produce this molecule called melatonin, and melatonin is essentially your body's sleep molecule, and if you inhibit that, you're going to have not only a harder time falling asleep, but also worse sleep quality. And one thing that inhibits your melatonin production is blue light. So what you want to do is eliminate or block blue light out entirely, and you can do this by blue light softwares. There's a ton of free ones online, or even just your phone's setting app, staying off screens entirely or just dimming brightness on them, and then just blue light glasses. You can get blue light glasses for like $10 on Amazon. Very cheap investment that can have a good payoff. And then next, kind of like I said earlier, just morning sunlight, but then also evening sunlight as well. It can really help with your circadian rhythm, and then also with melatonin production, kind of get your body into that sleep state by kind of letting it know, okay, it's time to go to bed in a few hours, let's start producing some melatonin. And then lastly, just dimming the lights in the room. The darker room, the better. And then also, if you are sleeping in some sort of room, ideally no lights are on when sleeping, just because lights kind of signal to your body that something should be going on, and then it's not necessarily time for your body to shut off and go to bed. Number 5 is exercise. So in order to get good sleep, we should prioritize exercise each and every day, except on those rest days, obviously. However, we should avoid exercise close to bedtime. Intense exercise each day helps with sleep. Like you may have experienced, maybe one day you went on a big run or had a really hard sport game or whatever it might be, and you had good sleep that night, and that's exactly why we should prioritize exercise. However, probably not do it close to bedtime, because it arouses you, gets that blood flowing, and gets you active, instead of trying to wind down for bed. Number 6 is wind down activities. So just creating a wind down routine can really be helpful in allowing your body to go to sleep not only faster but easier. So avoid like fast-paced and stimulating activities close to bed, like for example scrolling on your phone, intense and scary movies, exercise, or intense video games, and instead maybe do something like reading, prayer, quiet time, scripture, meditation, calm worship, or light music, or even something like stretching and mobility work, and journaling can be some easy ways to wind down before it's time to go to bed. Number 7 is caffeine consumption. So caffeine has a super long half-life, and that all that means is it essentially stays in your system for a very long time. So ideally, no caffeine 8 hours before bed, just so most of it's out of your system by the time that you are going to bed, because as you probably already know, caffeine negatively impacts your sleep. And then also in the morning as well, you can wait around 60 to 90 minutes in the morning to have your caffeine, just to kind of avoid that afternoon crash that would happen if you drank caffeine immediately after waking. And then number 8 is just bed reservation. This is just essentially just keeping your bed for sleep and intimacy only, and not really doing other activities on it like scrolling or video games or stuff of that nature. And this is essentially just conditions your brain for sleep, and it reduces your stress and promotes comfort and predictability when you do get in that bed, so it's easier to fall and stay asleep. And then number 9 is a brain dump. Like I see ways too many people not be able to go to sleep because they're stressed out or thinking of so many different thoughts on their mind when they're going to bed. And one easy thing you can do is just writing down all your worries, your tasks, or your to-dos, like on a journal or a piece of paper nearby. So that way you know that you have them in the morning when you wake up, and you don't necessarily have to worry about all of those thoughts right now. 1 Peter 5:7 says to cast your cares on him, and brain dumping or just journaling or even just through prayer is a really easy way of eliminating those anxieties, so that you can go to bed quicker and get more sleep in general. So that's just kind of like the benefits, consequences, and just how to get good sleep in general. And ultimately, I hope that helps with getting more higher quality sleep in general, and then also being able to go to sleep sooner, while also placing an importance on sleep in general, if we do want to have our habits aligned with our fitness goals while keeping Christ at the center. And then lastly is supplements. So there are so many different supplements out on the market that both work, that kind of work, and then some that are just kind of scams. So I went through and I created a list of 10 supplements that I would consider buying if I was you, especially if I was on a budget. I kind of listed these in order. So the 4 you see on this left side in green are kind of like must-haves or a high priority thing to consider, and then the ones in the yellow are kind of just personal preference if you want them or not. So number 1, a must-have is kind of whey protein. This is just obviously, as I kind of talked about earlier, protein is the building block of muscle, and whey protein is just super convenient and versatile way to get in a ton of protein in a very convenient and mess-free manner. Not only that, but there's a lot of like good flavors that are out there that are you can use in so many different ways, whether it be like pancakes, shakes, protein oats, whatever it may be, or even just drinking it with like milk or water. It's a great, easy way to get in a ton of protein in very easily. And the biggest thing with this is it just makes consistency way easier. Like I said earlier, one of the biggest mistakes I see is just people not getting enough protein in. So getting a good whey protein powder can be just a really easy way just to hit that protein goal each and every day and stay consistent with that. So 2 ones that I would recommend is NutriCross whey protein. You can also use code JADENK10 to get 10% off that. And then the Gold Standard brand. And the reason why I chose these is not only because they taste good, but also because of the cost. Especially if you're buying in bulk, whey protein can kind of get up in the price range, pretty pricey, even though it would be pretty cost effective per serving. So these are the two that I would look at if we're especially basing it off of cost, taste, and their macros. Number 2 is creatine. This is one of, if not the most studied supplement out there. It has so many benefits, including increased strength, power, and workout performance. It helps build lean muscle over time as well. There's a ton of brain health benefits, cognitive function, and then just improved muscular endurance in general. Creatine is a must-have if you, especially if you have the money for it. So the main company that is the most cost-effective way is through NutriCost. They have both unflavored and flavored versions. Again, you can use code JadenKDen to get a discount off of that. Out of the entire market, these are the most cost-effective ones, and also the flavored ones taste amazing. So definitely check out the deals and promotions that NutriCost often runs, so you can get this in bulk and for a very cheap cost. Number 3 is magnesium glycinate. So magnesium is a super helpful supplement, especially for your sleep, and glycine is a super helpful supplement for your sleep as well. So both of these combined can just be really helpful for supporting sleep quality. And then also they just help a lot with your nervous system function and helps your muscles relax and recover, and ultimately aids in stress management. So this is a great thing to take, especially to help with your sleep and stress and anxiety levels in general, but more so just to get you in that calm state and ready for sleep and really optimize that. One brand that I would recommend is Nature Bell. I kind of went on Amazon and saw which one was the most cost effective for the dosage, and this one was the best. Number 4 is omega-3s. So these reduce inflammation, improve joint health, support heart and brain health, and improves insulin sensitivity. There's so many good benefits for these, and so oftentimes we just don't get enough of them unless you're kind of eating a lot of fish. So this is one of the main things that we should be supplementing with, is just omega-3s. Again, I searched the internet, and it seems like this MOM Nutrix one was probably the most cost effective, especially for the dosage. So if you could only get 4 of them, 4 supplements, I would recommend whey, protein, creatine, magnesium glycinate, and omega-3s. And then some more optional ones. First off is vitamin D3, and then this is really helpful for supporting your testosterone levels and optimizing your immune system. I especially found, like, if I'm taking vitamin D and I'm on top of that, a lot of times I find that I don't really ever get sick, and honestly in general I never really get sick, just to if my sleep is optimized and my health is optimized in general, and I'm not super inflamed from a ton of unprocessed and unhealthy foods, I'm most of the time not going to get sick. And then also vitamin D3 also helps with better bone strength and mood and energy. So lots of good benefits from vitamin D3. You can get it from NatureWise. Go ahead and check that out on Amazon. And then number 6 is electrolytes. These are crucial for hydration, improving our workout performance. And then one hidden benefit of these is they can oftentimes prevent fatigue and headaches, just because sometimes our electrolytes are a little off balance, especially if we just drink a lot of just regular plain water with nothing in it. And you're a lot of times going to experience less brain fog as well. And if you're doing something where you get really sweaty, these are essential, because when you sweat, you're losing a lot of your electrolytes through your sweat, and these are just a great way to replenish those and get you feeling back to 100%. So the 3 brands that I would recommend is Relight, Element, and Liquid IV. So Relight and Element are just basically electrolytes. These have really good like sodium levels in them, as well as, like, they have good magnesium and potassium amounts as well. Not only do these taste great, but they also have good levels of the different ingredients in there that'll really help you out. And then lastly, Liquid IV. This is similar to Element and Relight, but it also is going to have some carbs in there, so it can be a good fast digesting carb thing to have, especially even as like a pre-workout or post-workout, or pre-run, post-run, you name it. Number 7 is zinc. This is really good for your testosterone production as well as your immune function. Those are kind of like the two main benefits of zinc, is testosterone and immune function, but also it can help with recovery, sleep, and hormones. Your hormones will really be dialed in if you are getting enough zinc in each day. Nature's Bounty is the go-to for this, just cost-wise. And the number 8, L-carnitine. This essentially helps transport your fatty acids into your mitochondria for energy, and this improves endurance and recovery in general, and ultimately just helps you use more fuel more efficiently. Again, you can go into NutriCost, code JadenK10 to save money on that. This is kind of like a pre-workout in and of itself. I found that I kind of have a little bit of an extra boost when I take this, but that is something to consider when you're, if you're on your budget, choosing a supplement. Number 9 is L-tyrosine. This has been a game changer for my focus and even just discipline in general, because it improves your focus under stress, helps with dopamine, and just supports motivation and cognitive resilience. So if I'm trying to lock in and do a lot of good work, L-tyrosine, especially paired with caffeine, has been super helpful for me to focus for long bouts of work, but even more importantly for like a pre-workout supplement to take, especially if I'm eating in a calorie deficit and I may not have as much energy and mental clarity. L-tyrosine can be really helpful for that, to get me mentally clear and sharp. Similar to that is L-theanine. This promotes the calmness that you feel without the sedation aspect. So it's like almost like a flow state kind of feel where you're calm, but not like tired. So it reduces anxiety and jitters and improves focus when combined with caffeine. This also has a ton of good sleep benefits as well. And if you want to get like really good work and focus in, you can take L-tyrosine and L-theanine paired with like a cup of coffee or an energy drink, and that's just a great way to have really good mental clarity in general, whether you're working or for a pre-workout, or whatever it might be. So when you do have your habits, your exercise, and your nutrition aligned, and your fuel form and foundation is locked in, as well as having the faith foundation, when you're trying to get fit, you will find that as you progress towards your fitness goals, you will get fit biblically with Christ at the center of it all. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys like this video, go ahead and subscribe and leave a comment on one of your biggest takeaways or insights that you learned in this video. I really hope that this video was impactful and beneficial for you guys, and that you took something away from it. If you know your body's a temple, but you don't necessarily treat it that way, I'm still taking on people for my coaching, and I help people get fit while keeping Christ at the center. So if that's you, go ahead and shoot me a DM over on Instagram. You can find that in my YouTube bio. And until then, go ahead and subscribe. I'll catch you guys in the next one.